So, Dharma friends, here we are again in our illumination class. We're just at the point of talking about the perfection of generosity. We're going to begin with a few prayers, which Richard will put up. There we go. So as my brother used to put on his answering machine, very succinct, you know, this is Dan, you know what to do. So we've done these prayers many times, so you know what to do. Sangye chodang soki chognam la jangchu bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penchu sangye drupasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings, migrators. Sangye chodang soke chognam la, jangchu bardu dagni kapsuchi, dagi chunen gipe sognam ki, drola panchu sangye drupasho. Okay. And then short mandala offering. By offering this ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers. In other words, you imagine the mandala plate or the mandala that you're offering sort of beautified, purified with various mantras and so forth, and then adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm. May all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. And request, O holy and perfect pure Lamas, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down, release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Thank you. So we are going to begin with a little meditation. So sit comfortably. Relax your body. Take a deep breath. Relax your mind. Place your attention on your respiration. You can start with trying to watch your heart. You don't have to do anything. Just watch your breathing. Don't control it. Once you've recognized the breathing, hold it in mindfulness to the exclusion of everything else. If you're coasting along and you notice that you're actually thinking about something else at the same time, kind of multitasking, Remind yourself to let go of those other thoughts. There's nothing else you have to attend to now. Invest that extra energy into just mindfulness of the breathing, of the respiration. Occasionally, you can bring to mind something to invigorate the mind to pay attention to the breathing. Remembering, for instance, the 4 special points that anything that increases, anything that goes up eventually goes down. All collections, money, whatever, end in dispersal. All meetings of friends and so forth end in separation. Every birth ends in death. When having relied on watching the breathing, the mindfulness of the breathing, your mind has become a little bit quieter. Now bring your attention to your mental consciousness. First of all, noting the contents of your mind. Likened to clouds in an otherwise clear sky, or birds or leaves being blown through the sky. And instead of focusing on the thoughts or feelings or images and so forth, delusions, focus instead on the nature of the mind within which they're arising, the conventional clear light nature of your mind. your developmental Buddha nature, which is the conventional nature of the clear light mind, in that it is not stained by thoughts. They are adventitious within that mind. It forms no obstacle to their arisal or reabsorption into the consciousness, thoughts and feelings. This is something we have with us all the time. And when things get really worrisome, we're terrified, we can go back to meditating on this and remember that we can get rid of all of these fears, worries, discomfort, inappropriate attention onto either pleasure or suffering. We have that ability because we have a life of leisure and endowment, this auspicious moment we're experiencing right now. It's a result of our past karma. I rejoice in thinking, so great that I created virtue in past lives, that I have taken a human rebirth with full senses at a time when the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma. Those teachings still exist. There are practitioners putting it into practice. The existence of ordained Sangha and benefactors. I have some faith in the teachings, if not full faith, at least hope that the teachings can bring about a transformation of myself, to better myself and to bring about a better situation for others. I can use this life, this auspicious moment, to accumulate wealth or power, cling to power, have pleasure of the senses, the 8 worldly dharmas, or I can use this situation toward the 2 great goals of liberation or enlightenment. And recognizing, as the Buddha said, that to opt for nirvana, for liberation for oneself alone, would be very selfish, as all sentient beings have been our mother numberless times in the past, have been depthlessly kind. They're exactly equal with us in wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy. Generating that empathy, that compassion and mercy for other sentient beings, to repay their kindness, I myself must make spiritual realizations to give them more than some trivial pleasure right now. Solving their individual problems this lifetime with some timely advice is all good. But to really benefit them in future lives, I have to set them on the path, lead them from life to life up to liberation and enlightenment. To do that perfectly, effortlessly, without error, I have to become enlightened myself. I have to accumulate the 2 collections of merit and wisdom. To do that, I need to know the teachings. And in today's class on the illumination of the intention by Lama Tsong, explaining the paramitas. We have a chance to accumulate merit by having a proper motivation at the beginning, to accumulate wisdom by understanding about emptiness. To think as a motivation, I'm going to participate in the class today, listening, contemplating, and meditating with the intention to accumulate the two collections in order to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to become a Buddha, in order to benefit all migrating beings. And bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you. Hi, Savansh, Ida, Paul. Some of you were here in a different arrangement of videos. So, JC, hi, JC. Anyone have any question from our previous class? Anything that's been bugging you? Paul, you okay? Are you all caught up?
Yep, all caught up, George. In fact, I thought I'd share an amusing anecdote when you were talking about us in our meditation and turning our attention from the breathing to the thoughts arising in our mind. And you said like a leaf on the wind. I had actually gone with like a car on the Cross Bronx Expressway, but I think that means I've been in New York a little too long.
You mean you were thinking your car was like a leaf in the wind?
Well, you're saying the thoughts arise in the mind like a leaf blowing on the wind.
Right.
And for me, the thoughts were more like cars on the Cross Bronx Expressway.
Right.
So I think too much time in New York.
Yes. So you can think of the time, whatever time that Cross Bronx Expressway might be devoid of cars without thoughts. That might not be very much in New York City. Yeah. Savansh, any questions? You okay?
Yes, Venerable George, I'm fine. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mikhail, no questions. Okay. So we've gotten up to the point of one of the outlines in Tutanjimba's translation called the generosity of bodhisattvas. And as much as I tried to put down the page number, can someone remind in the written text which page this is on?
109.
109, thank you. And in Jeffrey Hopkins' text?
185.
185. Okay, there we go. And so if you have the digital edition on your pad or your phone, you can look for the generosity of bodhisattvas. That's this outline. So this has 4 parts. So just sort of put it in perspective, we've talked previously about generosity brings the happiness of cyclic existence. What was it earlier? The generosity of one abiding in the first ground, the outline. The generosity of lower stations, meaning the generosity by people who are not yet Arya bodhisattvas, then the generosity that brings happiness and cyclic existence, the generosity that brings the happiness of nirvana. Those are the outlines that we'd finished. So now this generosity of bodhisattvas has 4 parts. The unique benefits of a bodhisattva's generosity. They're uncommon benefits. How the discourse on generosity is primary for both types of practitioners. the types of joy a bodhisattva obtains from engaging in generosity, and whether a bodhisattva suffers when giving away the body. Right? So let's see here. Page Jeffrey Hopkins text 185 or something like that, right? So Jeffrey translates them more or less the same way. Where is it? Bodhisattva's giving. 4 parts. Extraordinary benefits of a bodhisattva. It's giving. Jimpa said unique benefits. The importance of the discourse on giving for both the compassionate and the non-compassionate. So Jimpa just says for the 2 practitioners. The joy attained by bodhisattvas when giving, and whether or not suffering occurs when a bodhisattva gives away their body. Okay, so the text begins with the first 2 lines of Karika 13 in the first chapter, 113. Those who keep in mind their pledge to help sentient beings without much delay attain joy through their generosity. So the way that Jimpa puts it here almost sounds like it could mean those who keep in mind their pledge to help sentient beings without much delay. You know, they want to help them quickly. It actually, Jeffrey's translation is a little more accurate. Those bearing in mind a promise to help beings attain happiness from giving before too long. They get, without delay, they get the benefit of giving themselves right away. So Jimpa's translation continues, non-bodhisattvas do not invariably enjoy the happiness that is the fruit of their generosity immediately after the act. All right? So, for instance, the benefactors at the time of the Buddha, patrons who gave gifts, those who were thinking about creating the karma to have wealth in future lives and so forth, they don't get the gratification, they don't get the results of that giving right away. It's going to be in the next lifetime. Whereas the bodhisattva, here says, non-bodhisattvas do not invariably enjoy happiness that is the fruit of their generosity immediately after giving. That is to say, simultaneous with the recipient being satisfied through that giving. Because they do not see the fruits of their giving directly, they may not continue to engage in generosity. That makes sense, right? Whereas, in contrast, the bodhisattvas who keep in mind their pledge to help sentient beings in the long run, as Jimpa says, and to bring about their happiness in immediate terms. So, the aim of the bodhisattva is not only to bring sentient beings to enlightenment in the future, but also to bring some kind of relief and happiness now, immediately, in the short term, in the immediate term. So the bodhisattva, seeing the feeling of satisfaction brought about in the recipients of their generosity, through their generosity, they will, without much delay, attain supreme joy as the fruit of their giving. And remember, this first ground is called the joyous, Raptugawa in Tibetan. So that has to do with the kind of, also among other things, the kind of joy that they receive immediately when someone receives their gift, their generosity. They recognize that person. What does it say here? As experience, the feeling of satisfaction brought about in the recipients through their generosity. As soon as they see a beggar's satisfaction, Jeffrey translates. So this has to be taken into account, because sometimes when giving, the individual that you give to, you may be giving something that is beneficial to them, but they don't recognize it, and they might not appreciate it. They may not be satisfied immediately. So this has to be taken in a certain context. In certain situations, if you give a beggar, outside the Starbucks, a cup of coffee or some money to have breakfast or something like that, you may see their satisfaction immediately. In other cases, their satisfaction might not be apparent, but this is mainly talking about the general case. When you do to your giving, you can see their satisfaction. As they experience such fruits of generosity, they will continue to delight in giving at all times. Yeah. So the bodhisattvas, they experience the fruits of their giving, the delight that they experience comes about immediately rather than waiting for a future lifetime. Make sense? Anyone have a doubt about that? Pretty simple, no? So then next outline, how the discourse on generosity is primary for both types of practitioners, or as Jeffrey translates it, the importance of the discourse on giving. What did I say? The discourse, yeah. For both the compassionate and the non-compassionate. So that means these are the two kinds of practitioners. So this is the second two lines of verse 13. Since it's for both the compassionate and the one who is not, I'm going to say those who are not, this discourse on generosity is primary. Since it's for both the compassionate and the one who is not, this discourse on generosity is, I'm not sure where Jimpa gets the sense. For those merciful and those not so, only discourse on giving is therefore chief. This is how Jeffrey translates that verse. Since it is explained above, generosity brings forth all the happiness of birth in the higher realms, as well as that of definite goodness of all beings, of both the bodhisattva who is compassionate, and also the ordinary person who is not an embodiment of compassion. Say some certain patrons giving with the intention of finding their happiness in the God realm and so forth in the future. They're not necessarily compassionate. For both of them, this discourse on giving is primary in that it is the most important. So how does, Nadine, how does generosity create the happiness of high status, or higher happiness of birth in the higher realms? That's what Jim translates as birth in the higher realms. Generally, we say high status. How does generosity bring about that?
Because it's virtuous and it is merit, and when it becomes a throwing karma, then when it attains the rebirth in a higher rebirth, higher realm.
I was thinking you might say that. So is the generosity doesn't create the karma to be born in the upper realm, does it? Or does it?
It can.
Generosity?
Yes. It creates karma.
To take rebirth in a higher realm, you have to have throwing karma, right?
Yes.
Right. So what's the main cause of rebirth in the upper realms?
Ethic.
Yeah, morality, right? The second perfection. So here it says, as explained above, generosity brings forth all the happiness of birth in the higher realms. Jeffrey translates it, giving induces the happiness of high status and definite goodness, in the way explained above for all those whose nature is mercy and for those who do not have the nature of mercy. So generosity is mainly creates the karma, the completing karma of those who are born in the upper realms. And it also creates the happiness of those brief moments of happiness of those in the lower realms and relief and so forth. What do you think? Can generosity create the throwing karma to be born in the upper realms? What do you think, JC? You're muted.
Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. Okay. Nadine was taking the verse to say that it brought forth the happiness of birth in the higher realms, as though generosity was the cause of rebirth in the upper realms. Can that happen?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm here to learn that kind of exact thing.
Okay. Stephen, what do you think?
Oh, thanks, Venerable George. Well, I was trying to imagine a scenario where, of course, generosity brings resources. Well, if you had resources, you could be like born in a higher caste or, with access to, I don't know, all kinds of ability to practice. So to me, that would be a higher rebirth.
Okay.
I don't know.
Don, what do you think? Are you following this discussion?
Yes, I'm trying to follow George, and I think for me, karma is one of those deeply hidden things. And that's what I'm taught, but don't know.
Okay. Nadine has a thought. Okay. What do you think, Nadine?
I just remember this story when this little boy gave a handful of sand to the Buddha and imagined it would be gold. And then this boy was reborn as King Ashoka, wasn't it? And wasn't this a throwing karma that he did this kind of generosity?
So Nadine's remembering this story. This little boy who I think there were 3 or 4 little boys, and one got on the shoulder of the other, one got on the shoulder of the other, and then this little boy, the littlest, got on the top, and he had some sand, and he threw it into the bowl, the begging bowl of the Buddha. I think it was the Shakyamuni Buddha. And as a reason, but he didn't just do that, offering. He thought it was, he visualized it as gold. So so his rebirth as a human, as supposedly a result of that, was that due to the generosity, or was that due to his morality? Which was coincidence. So that karma was kind of, what would you say, a double whammy, he's practicing ethics at the same time as generosity. So something to investigate, whether the generosity alone can give the throwing karma to be born in the upper realms, but it certainly brings about the completing karma once you're born in the upper realms, or completing karma when you're born as an animal. Like the article, did anyone read the article that Doris kindly posted up for me on the Facebook page about the animals that have all of these glorious food and so forth? Did anyone read that? No one? Oh, okay. Okay. That was a wasted effort. So you can look at the Facebook page. We put up, I made it into a PDF from the Wall Street Journal just a couple of days ago, talking about the animals that have these incredibly luxurious lives. When we talked about, how generosity can ripen in the lower realms if you haven't created the karma to be born in the upper realms. So you should take a look at that. Subhash, what do you think?
Venerable George, when you asked that question, right, I a few things came to mind, and I want to ask for your clarification. So when you talk about generosity versus ethics, when we look at the 6 perfections, they are differentiated, right? Generosity comes first, followed by ethics, and then the others. So are you, in asking that question, are you implying that, I've read that, if you go to the Precious Garland, where he talks about high status Nagarjuna, then I think the cause is ethics. So in asking the question, are you trying to differentiate between the fact that generosity has certain effects, but they are not the same as sila or morality?
Yeah, that's one of the things. Yeah. So what is the definition of giving? Does anyone know? Mikhail, Dina? Katie?
I would say giving is sharing your resources, your talents, your possessions with others. And as we attempt to get into the bodhisattva path, to try to not be attached to what we're giving away, or also try to see the emptiness of who the receiver is and what we are giving itself.
Okay, those are all good thoughts. But giving, kind of like, what is the definition of giving? Giving is the intention to give away. Okay, and it has these other attributes, not having miserliness and attachment and so forth. Whereas ethics in the Mahayana setting, there are 3 kinds of ethics or morality. We call it the threefold Mahayana morality. Doris, do you remember what the threefold morality is?
I'm sorry, Venerable. I was multitasking, answering a question.
Okay, that's okay. You were answering a post. Toby, do you know the threefold Mahayana morality?
Thank you, Venerable George. I was sneakily trying to Google it and I haven't got there yet. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Ron, you know the threefold morality. Yeah.
No, Venerable George.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Okay. Ida, do you know the threefold Mahayana morality? You're muted still.
Well, I can guess, not harming others, not harming yourself, not harming the environment.
It's a good
Something
guess.
like that.
Good guess, but not the right answer. Doris has Googled it, I think. Okay.
It had to percolate up from the depths, and now just saying that I've forgotten it. Gathering all good dharmas.
Okay, so yeah, basically, yeah, that's one of it. So we say the abstaining from negative actions and virtuous actions, collecting virtuous dharmas, which can mean virtuous karma and teachings and other skills, and benefiting sentient beings. Those are the threefold Mahayana morality. So abstaining from negative actions is the main cause of consciously doing that, not just accidentally not creating negative karma, but consciously doing that is the main cause of rebirth in the upper realms. So, Richard, what are you thinking?
Venerable George, in thinking about that, as one of the moralities of benefiting sentient beings, that kind of intersects with generosity. Is generosity merely the intention to benefit, and morality the actual action of benefiting?
So, yeah, something to think about. I'm raising questions, hopefully in your minds, so that you'll investigate this further. But generally here, I think what this particular section is saying, reading from Jimpa's translation. Since, as explained above, generosity brings forth all the happiness of birth in the higher realms. Jeffrey translates as giving induces the happiness of high status and definite goodness in the way explained above for all. So what that means is that the generosity becomes the cause of the completing karma of having resources, because when you give, you create the karma to receive. And though in receiving those resources in the future, whether it be bread or, gift from Aunt Louise or a cool breeze in the hell realms and so forth, that induces happiness. So it's not as though the generosity itself creates the karma to be born in high status. It creates the happiness while in high status. Okay, let's continue on. So you think about that, and Nadine, you check whether generosity can create the cause, the throwing karma to be born in the upper realms. Maybe, yeah, you check. So where did we go? So this discourse on giving is primary in that it is the most important. So then there's a quotation from Nagarjuna's friendly letter. Did he write a lot of letters? What is a friendly letter, Paul? What does that mean, a friendly letter?
I think is it also, I think that's also a letter to a friend, right?
Yeah, this is a friendly letter. That's how Jimpa translates friendly letter. That's how Jeffrey translates that also. So it's a letter to a friend. Who is that friend,
Oh, was that I want to say King or Jatashatru or somebody like that? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a king. I don't think it was a Jatashatru, but yeah. So it was a king who was a disciple. So so in that text by Nagarjuna, this is different than the Precious Garland, right? This is another text by Nagarjuna. Knowing wealth to be fickle and devoid of essence, pray engage in giving perfectly to the monks, to the Brahmins, to the hungry, and to your friends. There is no greater friend to your next life than generosity. Or as Jeffrey translates, there's no better friend for the future than giving, bestowing gifts properly on monks, Brahmins, the poor, and friends, knowing resources as evanescent and pithless. What Jimpa translates as knowing wealth to be fickle is this word yoa in Tibetan that means kind of, movable, changeable, it's not reliable, right? Wealth to be impermanent. You have it one moment, the next moment you don't. It gets seized by the government. You have taxes to pay and so forth, or it's stolen. So it's unreliable. Wealth is unreliable and doesn't have any essence of true, as a true source of happiness. So in trying to motivate yourself to give, thinking about these things, that wealth that you have will be gone when you die. You can't take it with you and so forth. It doesn't bring real pleasure. It's important to have enough resources to keep yourself healthy and, moderately happy. Diana, what do you think? What were you thinking?
I'm remembering something I read decades ago. I was doing some research about caregiver burnout. And
Right.
they found that among the nuns whose daily practice was working with abused children, that they had no burnout, which was very unusual. For non-English speakers, that means sort of a loss of a sense of purpose and motivation and possibility. And what when they were interviewed, they said, well, you see, it's very nice if we can help the children, but we can't always succeed in helping the children. But we're always helping ourselves and we're always serving God, whether or not it is effective for the children.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were asking about the relationship between generosity and the creating of throwing karma, I was thinking about the line in the text about if you're not yet a bodhisattva, you do not have a sort of reliable source of joy independent of whether you're effective in the short term. But
Right.
for the bodhisattva, it's just there, and therefore it is a sort of permanent motivation to the actions of generosity, which, including its different parts, might be the creation of throwing karma.
So I think there's a teapot in your kitchen is whistling, no? Okay.
My computer is whistling, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, yeah, to be motivated in giving, to think about the fact that you're going to have to, at the time of death, you have to leave all of this behind anyway, and so forth, these various methods to motivate giving. So let's go on. The next subsection here, the types of joy a bodhisattva obtains from engaging in generosity, in giving. And verse 14, Karika 14. If simply hearing or thinking the phrase, give me, brings such joy to the children of the conqueror, the Jina Putra, right? That's an epithet of the bodhisattvas, like in the 37 practices of the children of the conqueror, right? If simply hearing the phrase, give me, brings such joy, joy not experienced even by the arhats who enter into peace, who've reached nirvana, what need is there to speak of joy when giving away everything? So Jeffrey translates, whereas when a conqueror's child hears and thinks the word give, happiness arises. Jimpa takes it as give me. If someone said, when the bodhisattva hears give, like I've mentioned before, when I hear the word give, like it's a kind of freeze up because I'm not a bodhisattva, thinking that someone wants something from me. I'm going to have to figure out some ploy not to give to them. When a conqueror's child hears and thinks the word give, happiness rises. The subduers abiding in peace. So here's subduers when we say the muni can apply to the hearers and solitary realizers. The subduers abiding in peace have no such happiness. What need is there to mention the joy of giving all? So one may ask, what kind of extraordinary joy arises in the bodhisattva when the recipients are satisfied through material resources, the very cause that underlie the bodhisattva's dedication to the act of generosity? That's the question, right? If simply hearing or thinking about the meaning of the phrase, give me, brings such joy to the children of the conqueror, giving rise to the thought they're asking something from me, such a joy is not experienced even by the arhats who enter into the state of peace, the expanse of nirvana. If this is so, what need is there to speak of the joy when giving away everything, both internal and external, satisfying the recipient in such a manner that this engenders joy greater than that of the bliss of tranquility? There is no need at all. What need is there to mention that happiness surpassing this peace is generated by satisfying beggars through giving away all external and internal phenomena. So the bodhisattvas experience the types of joy a bodhisattva obtains from engaging in generosity. So they get this kind of joy immediately upon seeing the satisfaction of the recipient, and they get joy in even hearing, request to give and so forth. And this is even greater than that of the bliss of nirvana. So, not surprising, this is called the joyous ground. Okay, so let's continue. Next sub-outlined, whether the bodhisattva suffers when giving away the body, right? Does a bodhisattva suffer? If asked, does a bodhisattva who gives away their outer and inner belongings, who has been described as engendering excellent bliss on the basis of giving, experience physical pain? Is physical suffering experienced by bodhisattvas who give away external and internal phenomena and who are said to generate wonderful bliss, wonderful happiness from any giving? Is physical suffering experienced? So they feel happiness from giving. Do they feel any suffering? Now, if the question relates to the great being that has attained one of the bodhisattva grounds, so that means a bodhisattva on the path of seeing or above, right? First ground is the path of seeing. So if it's an Arya being. Now, if the question relates to a great being that has attained one of the bodhisattva grounds, then like the chopping up of inanimate objects, he or she experiences no physical pain. Did you know this? Anna, did you know that the bodhisattva on the grounds, Arya bodhisattvas, have no physical pain when giving away their body?
Kind of, sort of, but I never knew why.
Okay, so the different explanations. One of the things we talked about previously is that they have a mental body, ikirangshin gilu. But here it's going about it from a different point. In the questions of Gangana Ganja Sutra, actually that's not what the text says. The Tibetan text says that in the Gagana Ganja Samadhi. And Jeffrey doesn't translate it either. They both call it the questions of Gangana Ganja. What does Gangana mean? Does anyone know? JC, do you know your Sanskrit? What Gangana means?
Gagana Ganja means the sound of the Ganga, I think. It means like the actual sound of the river, I think.
Oh no. That's Ganja. Yeah, that's the river Ganges. No, Gangana is another word for space.
Oh, Gangana Ganja, right. Oh, right.
Yeah, so space, usually we translate in Tibetan, we call Namka, we translate it in Tibetan, both Gangana and what's the other word for space in Sanskrit, do you know?
Akasha.
Akasha, yeah. Akasha and Gangana mean the same thing. Gangana, Ganja, and I'm not going to ask, well, I should ask JC, but anyway. Paul, what does ganja mean here? Do you know?
Here, I do not know.
No, so it's the Tibetan word zu, which means treasury. So Gangana Ganja means the treasury of space. So this is the name of a bodhisattva who comes in the presence of the Buddha in order to receive teachings about emptiness and questions that he has. It's in one of the let's see, I've got the note here. It is the 8th or 10th chapter of the Mahasamnipati Sutra, which is one of these Vaipulya Sutra collections of different sutras. One of the other chapters of it is the Akshayamati Nirdesa, which some of you who've studied emptiness before, Akshayamati is the person in that particular sutra. That's the sutra that Nagarjuna relies on to explain the definitive and interpretive, what it constitutes interpretative and definitive sutras of the Buddha. So anyway, this is one big compendium of sutras, 17 chapters, one of which is also the Ratnakutta. And in that, there is this samadhi of Gangana Ganja. So ganja, you shouldn't think is like a synonym of marijuana. That's different spelling and has a different root. So this is Gangana Ganja. It comes in, if you say mantras a lot, you'll find in Sanskrit mantras, Gangana comes a lot when talking about space. Okay, so the questions of Gangana Ganja, or the samadhi of Gangana Ganja. That's what the Tibetan text actually says. That's what Chandrakirti actually says. So this text says, it is thus, say there is a great forest of shala trees. What does he say? Yeah, it's a Jinpache says sala, it's shala, shala trees. And some people appear and cut a shala tree. Okay, there's a big forest of shala trees. The remaining shala trees do not feel attachment or aversion, or think, or thoroughly think, nor conceptualization or thorough conceptualization toward them with a thought, oh, that tree has been cut. We haven't been cut yet. So they might be, you might think they'd be fearful that they're going to be cut. So they could have aversion, or they could be attachment. Oh, they got to be cut and I didn't. They don't have any the trees don't have any kind of thoughts like that. So too, the Bodhisattva's forbearance, patience, that resembles this, which is a thoroughly trained forbearance, thoroughly trained patience, is most excellent and is equal to space. So one of the motifs in the Gangana Ganja Sutra is talking about space. It's called the space treasury, right? So Gangana Ganja, this bodhisattva who comes from another universe before the Buddha, and he has all these remarkable powers of taking from space various things. That particular samadhi is also renowned in Mahayana Buddhism. So Jeffrey translates it a little bit differently. It is this way. There is, for instance, a grove of great shala trees, and when someone enters it and cuts down a tree, the remaining trees do not become desirous or angry, thinking it was cut down and not us, not me. They have no thought or imagination. Such patience in a bodhisattva is the supreme, thoroughly purified patience equal to space. So, how is that? What brings about that kind of patience? Well, understanding of emptiness. There is no self that is being cut. That if someone were to cut you, or you were to cut your own body when making generosity, there is no conception of the self. So there is no anger. There is no conceptualization of oneself. Such patience as in a bodhisattva is the supreme, thoroughly purified patience equal to space. So there was a fellow in Oslo who wrote his PhD thesis on this Ganga Sutra. I'll put it up on the Facebook page if anyone's interested. But if you haven't read the Wall Street Journal article that I put up there, you may not be interested in this either. So in that, he translates this guy at University of Oslo. I think he's Chinese. He says, suppose there is someone in a great forest of shal trees. If he cut a shal tree and the rest of trees do not think that is cut down, but we are not. This is because they neither have any attachment nor anger. They are beyond thought constructions, imaginings, and fictions. This is the highest purity of patience of the bodhisattvas, which is like open space. So this is talking about, when you have a realization of emptiness, when you have a direct realization of emptiness, you have no other conceptualizations, no other thoughts in your mind. So the bodhisattva can rely on that memory consciousness of the direct realization of emptiness and not feel pain and aversion to giving their body. Okay, so then there's a quotation from another text by Nagarjuna. The previous text by Nagarjuna was the letter to his friend, the king. This is called the Precious Garland, which you've heard before. So Jimpa translates, he has no physical pain, so how would he have mental pain? Through compassion, he feels the world's pain. Because of this, he long endures. So remember when we talked about the arhats, we're just talking about the first Bhumi Bodhisattva here, right? First Bhumi Bodhisattva has no physical pain. Even the arhats, here in solitary realizers, arhats do have physical pain, but they have no mental suffering, right? Remember our discussion before? The examples that, that while they still have the continuity of contaminated aggregates, they can feel physical pain, but their mind is at ease, like the Buddha when he was in fever and so forth. He said there are great waves of pain coursing through the Buddha's body, but his mind is at ease, kind of explaining in accordance with the Hinayana understanding. So Jimpa translates there, he says, this statement too is intended from the point of view of a bodhisattva that has attained the grounds. Jeffrey translates, Nagarjuna says this about those who have attained a ground. So now there's verse 115. And if you're confused, if you're looking between Jeffrey Hopkins' translation and Jimpa's translation, in Jeffrey Hopkins' translation, the verse comes after this next explanation. Here it comes before. It's because in Lama Tsongkhapa commentary, in Gompa Rapsel, the root verses are not mentioned. He mentions them in terms of the commentary. They're not embedded in the Gompa Rapsel itself. So you could put the verse before or after the explanation. So I'll read what Jimpa translates after this verse 15. Now, if the question posed above were to be from the point of view of one who has not attained the ground of perfect joy, what does that mean? Rachel, what does that mean? He has not attained the ground of perfect joy.
Not yet on the path of seeing.
Yeah, not yet attained the first bhumi. Okay. If it's from the point of view of one who has not attained that bhumi, a ground totally free of attachment to one's body and material possessions, on that ground, you have no attachment to them any longer, there would be physical pain. So someone on the path of preparation, just before the path of seeing or the path of accumulation, there would be physical pain, since he would since he or she would undoubtedly encounter conditions that tax their body, since conditions contrary to sustaining the body befall it, Jeffrey translates. So the example we gave before of Shariputra, when he was a bodhisattva many eons before, and he cut his right hand in order to give to a demon. He felt pain in doing so, and so he got frustrated. He gave up bodhicitta as a result of that, right? Remember that story. So nonetheless, even on such occasions, when the bodhisattva before the path of seeing, before attaining a ground, feels pain, nonetheless, even on such occasions, because of that suffering, the bodhisattva will abide in conditions that lead them to seek the welfare of other sentient beings even more, right? So they feel pain on the path of preparation, path of accumulation, and even proto-bodhisattvas those who want to become bodhisattvas before entering the path, they feel pain, but that gives them even more cause to feel compassion for sentient beings, because they understand this is the kind of pain that sentient beings are experiencing. For when the bodhisattva sees those who are trapped in the unbearable states of existence, such as the hell beings, animals, pretas, hungry ghosts, and so on, whose bodies are consumed by intense suffering without interruption, suffering that is 1,000-fold more unbearable than the pain of slicing off a piece of his own flesh, the bodhisattva will disregard his own suffering, her own suffering, caused by cutting their body and giving it away, from their own pain, disregarding it and taking this experience of their own suffering as a reason. Swiftly they strive with effort to cut away the pain of others, such as their birth in the hells. Okay, so the Arya Bodhisattva feels no pain. So that's the time when it's said that definitely there's no problem in giving away your body because you feel no pain. Before that, there is pain, so there is a danger that you can get frustrated and so forth, especially on the path of accumulation before you've developed stable bodhicitta. It's not the time to give away the body. We all following? Anyone question? KT, you're okay? Okay. So then, as is the case throughout the text, Lama Tsongkhapa quotes the translation by Nakso Lotsawa. Lotsawa means what? Does anyone know? Rachel, what does Lotsawa mean?
Translator. Translator,
right? So the great Nakso was one of the great translators. In the translation of Chandrakirti's text from Sanskrit into Tibetan, the one that we have that we're using now, and the one that's most common is what? Paul, do you know which translation? Is it Naxos?
I think it's Patsap Lotsawa.
Yeah, Patsap Lotsawa. Patsap Lotsawa also translated the commentary, the self-commentary and other texts, but Nakso, I think, was before Patsap, and his translation is sometimes better. And Lama Tsongkhapa had access to both translations of the root verses and the commentary, and sometimes, generally, he says, when he quotes Nakso Lotsawa's translation, he usually says it's better. So he says in Nakso Lotsawa's translation, this stanza appears in the following: through the pain of cutting his body and giving it away, he views the suffering of others, such as those in the hells, and on the basis of what he has experienced, he strives with effort to cut away the pain of others, or as Jeffrey says, to eliminate the suffering of others. So thus, the explanation I, Lama Tsongkhapa, I.J. Tsongkhapa, have provided above is based on drawing from two different versions of the translation of this stanza. So if you go back, you can see on the previous, just a couple of paragraphs above that, we had verse 115, and this is Lotsowa's translation of 115. You can kind of compare the two. Okay? Everyone okay? So text continues. Thus, so it is only when one possesses this kind of power of intention that one can give away one's body. So what does that mean? When can one give away one's body? What kind of intention is this talking about? Mikhail, you following?
Yeah, the intention to help other beings not to suffer like they do when they cut their own flesh.
Right. Let's see, what is it? So Jeffrey translates, if such power of thought is possessed. So Jimpa's translating intention. Usually intention has a slightly different meaning. So Jeffrey translates, if such power of thought is possessed, that means the thought that allows you, experiencing the pain, to imagine the suffering of beings in the lower realms, and that motivates you even more to give away. That's when it's legitimate to give away your body. So you're completely safe on the path of seeing when you're on the first ground and above. But even before that, if you have a powerful mind that's able to utilize that suffering to generate compassion for others, to utilize your own suffering in giving away your body, because you will have suffering there, that's legitimate. If
so
such power, yeah, go on.
So it's more a quality or a power of your thought, of your development, right. Spiritual development than an intention.
Right. So, for instance, you all are familiar with the practice of Tonglen. Is there anyone who doesn't know what Tonglen is? KT, do you know what Tonglen is?
It's the giving and receiving practices of attempting to take the suffering of others and then give them your joy and happiness.
Right, right. So, for instance, we do that. Generally, we do Tonglen mentally, right? Imagine taking on the suffering of others in the hell realms, those who are pretas or animals, or your people that have cancer, or those who have other kinds of problems. Sometimes on the breathing, imagine breathing that in, putting it on the self-cherishing thought, and then sending out your body, your possessions, and your virtues of the three times to benefit sentient beings. So if someone is familiar with Tonglen, they may be able to, in certain circumstances, because when you imagine taking on the suffering, what you are imagining that you're doing is that you're counteracting the self-cherishing thought, because you're voluntarily taking on this suffering. So you have mental joy in doing that. Even if you do it in actuality, you take on the suffering of others, you feel some joy, mental joy in doing that. So that's kind of analogous to this situation. Jimpa says, so it is only when one possesses this kind of power of intention or thought that one can give away one's body. And since there is no contradiction asserting the presence of such a thought or intention even before the bodhisattva grounds are attained, it is said that even bodhisattvas who have not yet attained the grounds give away their body. Right? So on the path of preparation, path of accumulation, it's possible with a very strong mind, even though you feel pain, that you give away your body if you're able to utilize it in such a way that it brings mental joy to you. Okay, making sense? Rachel, what do you think?
So I've been looking at this section in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand lately, and it's equated to when you can give away your body as if it were like giving away a plate of vegetables. Is this in kind of, do you see that as
Yeah. So Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, at first the Bhagavan, however you like to translate that, the Lord, Buddha, taught us to give vegetables and so forth. Eventually we will be able to give away our own body. Okay, so if you're at a stage where giving away your body is no suffering, like giving away a plate of vegetables or a handful of vegetables, that would be what? Which bodhisattva would that be? Is that the bodhisattva in the first bhumi or one below, even below that? Rachel?
Well, the first bhumi has no attachment to material things, so.
Well, they don't feel any pain either. They don't feel any pain in giving away their body.
Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question.
So, the analogy that's given there, I'm not sure what verse they were translating or which translation you have. If you can give away, if you've reached a bhumi, if you're an Arya Bodhisattva, you can give away without any hesitation because you feel no pain, right? There may be some other kinds of mental constraints in your mind, but you feel no pain. Before that, you feel pain, but you could give away the body in the same way that you can give away vegetables that you may be attached to, like you have some avocados. I don't know if you like avocado, something good, and it's kind of hesitant to give. It's almost painful to give away, but it doesn't cause you physical pain. In the case of the bodhisattvas on the path of preparation and the path of accumulation before that, they do feel pain, but they can counter that pain by utilizing it to increase their bodhicitta, to increase their joy in taking on that pain. Like in Tonglen, you actually feel, I've taken on the suffering of others. Now they're free from suffering. You feel mental joy about that. In the same way, giving your body, thinking about the joy of others, even though you feel pain, that's legitimate to give the body at that time. So a lot to think about here. Savanch, what do you think?
Venerable George, this line of discussion has raised another question for me.
Right.
So imagine for a minute, right, that you are practicing the Dharma, but you're say in a retreat setting, and all you're doing is refining the mind, okay, which is doing meditation.
Right.
All the different kinds of meditation, including the meditation on no self.
Right.
Are you saying that the mind has such an ability that if it is so deeply refined, its experience of the physical can be so diminished as opposed to the experience of the mental, that really the physical does not play in? Because
not exactly. If we're talking about, say, an ordinary being, not before the path of seeing, when there's no longer physical pain, they had this mental body and so forth and so on, and great resources. Say just ordinary person, they can still feel pain, but the joy, the mental joy, is greater than that. Let's say, for instance, the classic example of the mother who goes out, she hears her son screaming out in his garage, and she goes out and sees that the car that he's been working on underneath, has fallen on him. And even with gargantuan effort, even though it's painful, she's breaking her muscles or whatever, she tries to pull up the car out of the mental joy of possibly saving her son. So one can experience suffering, physical suffering, while experiencing mental happiness.
Yes.
Right. That's the point. So in the case of Tonglen, you imagine taking on the suffering of others. It's all in imagination, but in some cases you can take on the suffering of others, and you can have, at that point, you can feel mental happiness. You can feel joy. So, at the same time as feeling the physical suffering.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. How are we doing? Ron, what do you think?
Didn't Tsong Khapa have back problems in the last few years of his life?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was in the last few years of his life. There was back problems he had, and he went to a yogi and received transmission. I think maybe he got from Manjushri, Mani Hatong. Has anyone heard of the Mani Hatong meditation? It's a meditation to help get rid of the lung that was causing his back pains. When I had some kind of similar kind of pains, I asked Lama Zopa's help, and he sent me to Kirti Senchab Rinpoche, who had the transmission of this Mani Hatong practice, and it's supposed to help with lung and so forth. So Lama Tsong Khapa did have some back pains that prevented him, but that was not as a result of taking on other people's suffering. That was just like a karmic result, from lung and so forth, and studying and so forth. Okay. So let's continue. Oh, Katie, sorry.
Oh, thanks. I have a question. Can an ordinary being who is a mother who gives away her body through like pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding, will she create virtue and merit by those acts of motherhood as an ordinary being?
I think so. Yeah, when we do things selflessly, not necessarily having realized selflessness of persons, but we're generous, and if you watch the soap operas, in the medical soap operas, there's so many mothers is pregnant, and the doctor says, if you give birth to this child, you'll die, and the mother says, please kill me, let my child live. Those kinds of things are possible, certainly, out of great affection. Some of it may involve ego, but still becomes virtuous actions, I think.
So even like not with the intention of creating virtue and merit, or the dedication of the virtue and merit, it still can come forth like that's.
Oh,
still,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think
probably a basic question,
when you see people that are suffering, if you see a dog on the side of the road that's been hit by a car, and you go over to comfort it or help it, or see if you can give some medical help, you're not necessarily thinking of the virtuous karma that you're creating. You're just moved by compassion and mercy and good heart and so forth. So that definitely creates, I think, definitely creates virtuous karma. Okay, Diana, what do you think?
Oh, I heard Robert Thurman give a talk where he said that any ordinary parent, when they see that their child is suffering, especially a young child, has the instinctive thought, oh, if only it were me, if only I were in pain, if only I were ill. And that for ordinary beings, most of us don't go around thinking that whenever we see somebody who's suffering. And so that this is a kind of unusual experience of generosity around this. And he went on to say that he thought that to the extent that men are better than they were a few generations ago, it's because there were more men who were active parents to their children and had that opportunity to have that experience.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, but definitely that's mentioned in the teachings many times, that for someone that you like I gave the example of the mother whose son was under the car and exhibits incredible strength and so forth, even if it rips her muscles and so forth, to try to save him. So yeah, if your child has a fever or something like that, imagining, oh, I wish I could take that on, that's almost like Tonglen, but not necessarily with the motivation of someone who's practicing Tonglen, who's doing it in order to erode the self-cherishing thought. Okay, so let's continue a little bit further. So the next section here says, subsection, the divisions of the perfection of generosity. Okay, so this is a very important point. Generosity devoid of the gift, receiver, and giver is called a supramundane perfection. What does that mean? Devoid of the gift. Does that mean you give generosity without giving a gift? No, devoid means when the generosity, the intention to give, when sustained by uncontaminated wisdom, devoid of the perception of a truly existent gift, truly existent recipient, receiver, and a truly existent giver, yourself, donor. That's called, in the Great Mother of Perfection Wisdom Sutras, a supramundane perfection. So when we talk about the practice of the perfections, it's said that all of the perfections should be practiced in any one perfection. You should have the generosity of generosity, the morality of generosity, the patience of generosity, the enthusiastic perseverance of generosity, the concentration of generosity, and the wisdom of generosity. So the wisdom has to accompany all of the perfections. You have to, whatever you're practicing, you have to think of, let's say, in the case, this three things: the donor, that is yourself, I am not truly existent. The person I'm giving to isn't truly existent, isn't inherently existent. The act of giving, which includes the gift, is not inherently existent. Like when we talk about the emptiness of the three spheres, when we do dedication of merit also, we call the emptiness of the three spheres. So Jeffrey translates this: giving void of gift, giver, and receiver is called a supramundane perfection. The giving of one who's thought to give away is conjoined with the uncontaminated wisdom, empty of observing a gift, giver, and receiver as truly existent. So what does that mean? Empty of observing. That means that realizes that the gift, that which you're giving, yourself, the donor, the giver, and the receiver, are all empty of being truly existent. that is called supramundane giving. Before that, before the path of seeing, you can still have perfection, a practice of the perfection of giving, but it's not called supramundane. Remember this word supramundane? What does supramundane mean, Ida? Do you know? You remember?
Was when you have a direct realization of emptiness in the first bhumi.
Right, supramundane as opposed to mundane. Mundane means worldly, right? In Tibetan, we say chiktenpa, so when we talk about vipassana, mundane vipassana means a vipassana that is not meditating on emptiness, it's meditating on the virtues of the next dhyana, higher, next concentration, and the disadvantages of the where you are and the advantages of the next one. That's called mundane vipassana. Supramundane vipassana is when you're meditating on emptiness. So supramundane means beyond the world. So supramundane perfection means a perfection which is conjoined with the wisdom that realizes emptiness, particularly realizing when you're talking about giving, yourself, the giver, the recipient, and the gift are empty of inherent existence. Okay, making sense? JC, is that making sense? Yeah, supramundane, okay. Okay, so since the meditative equipoise of an Arya that does not objectify is supramundane, what does that mean? Since the meditative equipoise of an Arya that does not objectify. Who would like to translate into simpler English? Paul, what would you say? Oh, Richard, you had your hand.
I think this means that in the meditative equipoise of an Arya that does not objectify means that the Arya in meditative equipoise is not looking at these at the giver, the gift, and the recipient as truly existent, and basically they're not objectively there.
Right. It doesn't even have to be the giver and giver. It just says meditative equipoise of an Arya. So what does that mean? Which does not objectify? That means they have a direct realization of emptiness.
Right.
And so there is no sense that the field of what is meditating on is inherently existent. You can apply that to generosity and to these three spheres. Since the meditative equipoise of an Arya that does not objectify is supramundane, generosity sustained by this is characterized as supramundane perfection, as a supramundane perfection. In contrast, on the other hand, generosity that is not sustained by such non-objectification is a mundane perfection. So let's see. Sean, on the path of preparation, does at the end of the path of preparation, the bodhisattva has a realization of emptiness, which is a union of shamatha and vipassana, a unification of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight, meditating on a mental image of emptiness. So do they objectify, or in this terms of Jimpa, are they objectifying at that time, the way that he's trying to use this? Is their meditation meditative equipoise supramundane, in other words. They're realizing emptiness. Is that therefore supramundane?
I would think it's super mundane, yes. I mean, but they have but you're saying that they have a conceptual. It's still a conceptual.
Yeah, you have to look up my Italian mudra. So it's not supramundane, it's mundane, because what is appearing to them is a mental image of emptiness, which itself appears to be inherently existent. They are realizing emptiness, but it's not a supramundane realization. They haven't reached the supramundane path of the path of seeing.
So when you said they're viewing emptiness, then they're not directly viewing it. They're viewing a conceptual object.
Well, they have a realization of emptiness. They are realizing it. It's a valid realization, but it is not a direct realization. When we talk about realization, you can have two ways that you can have realization: by direct perception or by inference. You can realize something validly by inference. You know that it's true. You validly realize something. Let's say you can validly infer that there's fire in that valley over there because billowing smoke is coming up. You can infer, that's called a realization, but it's not a direct realization. To have a direct realization, you have to walk to the edge and look down and see the fire down there, right? So the bodhisattva on the path of preparation does have a realization by inference, inferential realizer. They've realized emptiness, which is valid, but it's not a direct realization. So it's not supramundane. It's still a mundane realization. Rachel, what do you think?
So does that mean that there's attachment that's arising during a conceptual realization of emptiness without the direct realization, but an inferential? Well, if it's a mundane,
right,
not super mundane,
right,
is there attachment or not attachment?
Well, there's no at that point when they have that realization, there are no manifest afflictions in the mind. They've realized emptiness. They are realizing emptiness by means of the mental image, like my wristwatch band is coming off here. So let me just take it off so I don't fiddle with it anymore. So it's like seeing something through the a positive, like when you take in cameras, when you take photos, you can get a negative or a positive on the the plastic that comes back, the celluloid that comes back, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like, say, for instance, in a motion picture, is that a negative or a positive? When you have a projector sending light through that celluloid, is that a positive or a negative? Anyone know?
It's a positive for sure.
Yeah, and what you see out there, it looks all the full colors. So if you look through a positive image with one of these little viewers, it's as though you see the Eiffel Tower out there, but you are seeing it by means of that image. You're not focusing your eye on the image. You are realizing, you seem to be seeing the Eiffel Tower out there, right? Or the Empire State Building or whatever. So that's a similar kind of case with conceptual realization of emptiness. You have something appearing to you, mental image of emptiness, and you're knowing emptiness as a result of that, by means of that, but you are not conceptualizing it the way that it's appearing to you. It's appearing to you as though it was inherently existent, the mental image. That's why it's a mundane path. but you are actually realizing emptiness itself inferentially. What do you think, Stephen? What do you think?
Well, you know, I was thinking along a little bit different lines. So in a direct realization of emptiness, they describe the experience as like a water being poured into water. That is, there's no sense of subject or object in that experience. And to me, that's what came up in my mind when it was talking about non-objectification. Is that kind of part of the sense as well?
I don't think so. When you have a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight, realizing emptiness conceptually, no?
I was talking about a direct realization.
Yeah, I know that. But I say,
Okay.
even then, you can have a sense of your mind and emptiness as not being subject and object. They can be mixed like water and water. So the difference is whether you're realizing it by means of a mental image or not. So that, I don't think that's the case. Let's see. Let's go a little bit further. So that's some good qualms coming up in your mind here. Oh, wait, you still have more? Stephen, do you have another? Okay. Okay. Since the meditative equipoise of an Arya does not objectify, since the meditative equipoise of an Arya that does not objectify is supramundane, generosity sustained by this is characterized as supramundane, as a supramundane perfection. In contrast, generosity that is not sustained by such non-objectification is a mundane perfection. The clear distinction between these two cannot be ascertained directly by those who have not attained the ground of ultimate awakening mind. Okay, so let me read Jeffrey's translation of that same paragraph. The unapprehendable meditative equipoise of a superior. It's what Jimpa is translating as non-objectifying. It's just another synonym for talking about a realization which is not grasping at true existence, right? The giving of one, let's say, the unapprehendable meditative equipoise of a superior is supramundane. It's beyond the world. Can you have an unapprehendable meditative equipoise of a non-superior, of a non-Arya? Paul, what do you think? Is that said to be?
Say that again, George.
So Jeffrey translates as unapprehendable meditative equipoise. Jimpa translates it as a meditative equipoise that does not objectify. Can you have that as a non-Arya?
That does not objectify. Can you have that as an Arya? I would think not.
Well, you have a meditative equipoise that's realizing emptiness, so you're not objectifying that. But the crucial thing is here is of an Arya. Once you're an Arya, you have a direct realization. It's no longer say union of tranquil abiding and penetrated insight by means of the mental image. So Jeffrey translates the unapprehendable meditative equipoise of a superior, of an Arya being, someone on the first bhumi or above, is supramundane. Right. Therefore, giving conjoined with it is assigned as such a perfection, as a supramundane perfection. Giving that is not conjoined with this unapprehendability is mundane. The difference between them, it cannot be directly ascertained by those who have not attained an ultimate mind of enlightenment. What is an ultimate mind of enlightenment? Ron, do you know what an ultimate mind of enlightenment is?
Wouldn't that be a Buddha?
No, that's what I was thinking you'd say. Ultimate mind of enlightenment means ultimate bodhicitta, right? Ultimate bodhicitta is someone who is not, you can't know this until you've realized emptiness directly. If ultimate mind of bodhicitta, remember conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. You could say ultimate mind of enlightenment, conventional mind of enlightenment. It means bodhicitta, mind of enlightenment. Conventional bodhicitta is just the wish to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. Ultimate bodhicitta means the direct realization of emptiness within the mind stream of someone who has conventional bodhicitta. That's what's meant by ultimate mind of enlightenment here. So someone who is the difference between these, between a supramundane perfection and a mundane perfection, cannot be ascertained by someone who has not had a direct realization of emptiness. That's the gist. So a lot of subtle points here if you think about it. Let's go on a little bit further. The term beyond, in Sanskrit, it's para. What is it in Tibetan? Do you know? Paroltu, right? Like paroltu jimba, paro. Para in Sanskrit means beyond. The term beyond, para in Sanskrit, refers to the other shore or the other side of the ocean of cyclic existence. Well, para doesn't mean only that. In this context, it means that. Para can just mean that mountain over there. It doesn't have to mean, as opposed to one that's here. So in this context, the term beyond refers to the other shore or the other side of the ocean of cyclic existence. Thus, it refers here to Buddhahood, the total elimination of the two obscurations. So that's that's the origin for saying that only the Buddha, I think Rachel had mentioned this last time, only the Buddha actually has the perfections, because it refers to having arrived at the other shore. This side is samsara, and the other side being enlightenment. To reach beyond, and he translates that's the Sanskrit word paramita, is to have gone beyond. In explaining this term, Chandrakirti's auto commentary says something. So let's say, first of all, so when we talk about the paramitas, how do you usually translate paramita into English? Anna, do you know, have you heard the term paramita?
Just the great perfections.
We can translate paramita as perfections. That's popularly how it's translated. I think those who know the etymology of the word realize that it means having gone beyond. So sometimes you can say the perfection of wisdom or the wisdom gone beyond for the term prajna paramita, right? Or you could say dana paramita. What would dana paramita mean? Does anyone know? JC, what is dana paramita?
Has generosity gone beyond, or giving?
Yeah, or perfection of generosity, right? Paramita. So each of the perfections, the word paramita is there, or you could say it's kind of hard to say each of the gone beyonds. So it depends on the context that you're saying it grammatically, which sounds nicer to your ear, whether you say gone beyond or perfection. So Edward Conze, I think, who translated many of the Prajnaparamita sutras and other texts, he was one that usually would say wisdom gone beyond, rather than saying perfection of wisdom. So in explaining the term paramita, Chandrakirti in his auto commentary says, the grammatical rule, quote, so this is a grammatical rule, if there is a subsequent term, do not make it invisible, unquote. So that's a grammatical rule in certain circumstances. The grammatical rule that we just said makes the accusative case invisible, retaining its form. Alternatively, because it belongs to the group of the type prisodara, actually he has PRI, it's actually the R there is the, in Sanskrit, how many vowels are there in Sanskrit? Does anyone know? Maybe Suvash, do you know how many vowels there are?
I'm sorry, Venerable George, I don't know.
I don't know. You don't speak Hindu in your place in India, or?
No, I do speak Hindi, but I can't speak for Sanskrit, and also when it comes to Hindi, my capacities are fairly diminished now.
Oh, okay. Paul, what are the vowels in Sanskrit?
Well, it's I, U, A, I. Ri.
Yeah.
I might say 12, 14, I always lose count.
16 vowels.
16, right, yeah.
So we say so short A and long A, E, so short I and long I, E, Ru, Riri, Lili. So there's a vowel R and there's a vowel L sound also that are semi-vowels, right? In English, we don't have that, right? And then the O and U and so forth, long and short. So here, this word prisodara is actually the vowel R sound. It shouldn't have an I after it. It should just be prisodara. Alternately, because it belongs to the group of the type prisodara and so on, it is left as a word possessing a suffix ma. Okay, so what is this talking about? Why is Chandrakirti talking about the etymology, so the construction of the word paramita? Because paramita, actually the last part of it, ita, I mentioned in the previous class, is past participle of a verb to go, right? Gone. There are other words, like for instance, when we talk about the gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi, svaha. What does gate mean there, Stephen? You know that mantra.
It means gone.
Gone, right? But ita also means gone. It's another verb. There are various verbs for go. So ita, it's not mita. So somehow the M has to come in there between para and ita, right? We say paramita. So there is some grammatical rules that are being imposed here. Why Chandrakirti is going to this problem, I think it's kind of a prelude to later, one of the more important investigations of a word is pratitya samutpada. John, what does pratitya samutpada mean?
Dependent, well, it's pretty clumsy in English. Dependent co-origination or something like that.
Yeah, dependent arising, dependent code, whatever. So that later, when we get to the sixth bhumi, there's a long discussion here and in Prasanapada of the etymology of pratitya samudpada, how it's understood, not in the sense of the hearers, solitary realizers, the Hinayana explanation of it. Mainly there is talking about arising because of causes and conditions. But here it comes about the etymology or the construction, reconstruction, how that word comes about indicates the meaning of emptiness. So here, now we're just bringing this up in the case of this word paramita. So basically, we'll read what it says here, but basically what it is that when you, in the construction of a compound, two words coming together, sometimes you just add the two words together, like bodhicitta, right? Bodhi is a word by itself, means enlightenment. Chitta means mind. So you can say bodhicitta. In some cases, there are particles that are added, say, after the first word, and a particle that's added after the second word when you put them together. That's basically what's being talked about here. So para, when it is, well, let's say, what did I say? The grammatical rule. Now let me read what how Jeffrey translates this section here. That little paragraph which ends with note 220. In Jeffrey's translation, he says, in his commentary, Chandrakirti says, quote, by the rule, quote, the elision does not take place before the second member of the compound. What does elision mean?
Dropping out.
Yeah, you erase something, right? Elision. Jimpa translates it, do not make it invisible. So in his commentary, Chandrakirti says, by the rule, the elision does not take place before the second member of a compound. So what's the elision? You're adding, when putting these two words together, you're adding something at the end of the first word, para, which would be M sound, and at the end of ita, which would be another compound, which you do erase, but you don't erase the M in certain cases here. This says, by the rule, the elision does not take place before the second member of a compound. So you don't elide the M that you're adding for some grammatical rules. So by the rule, the elision does not take place before the second member of the compound, end quote. The case of the object is not elided, that is, the para becomes param, and therefore is left manifest, is left there. So that's the gist of it. So if you were if you were thinking you could construct this compound like bodhicitta without adding or taking any letters away, it's just bodhi plus citta. Here you might think para ita, but you can't do that according to Tibetan to Sanskrit grammar. You have to add a particle at the end of para, which in this case is this M sound. Okay, let's continue. So this again, when talking about dry bones, you might think, who needs this? Who's going to be interested in this? This will be useful later when we talk about the construction of pratitya samudpada, dependent origination, because it's in a sense it has the same meaning as emptiness. It becomes very important. So Jimpa translates Jayananda, Pandita Jayananda, who's the only Indian Sanskrit commentary of Chandrakirti's auto commentary. So Chandrakirti wrote the Karikas and he wrote his own commentary. Jayananda wrote another commentary So that's the one we've been talking about many times, that Lama Tsong Khapa sometimes agrees with, sometimes disagrees. Pandit Jayananda explains this commentary passage as follows. So that means he explains what Chandrakirti said in that was just quoted there about Prisuddhana and so forth. He says, in Sanskrit, beyond is para, right? The Tibetan, the Sanskrit word para, while to go is ita, or in this case, gone is ita. And when these two words are combined, the accusative singular is added to para. So who is a grammarian here? Anyone? Okay, so JC, what is accusative? Nowadays, in English language, they've stopped using accusative. That's what you use in Latin. What is the accusative case?
That's for the direct object of the sentence. So that's a second case.
Yeah. So accusative means in
jurisdiction, in jurisprudence, it's the person being accused.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. That's why accusative. So like I put the book on the table, right? There's gone to the other shore. So the other shore here, the para, gone to the other, to that over there, you have to add the accusative ending to para, which adds am to it. Making sense so far? Nadine, are you lost?
I try to follow, and I will listen to it again. I found these words in the book quite boring, and when you explain it, it's not boring at all.
Well, I'm sure it's so boring to those who are listening to it with a different mindset. So that's the origin of the M sound at the end of para. Param ita, gone to the other. So the accusative is added onto para, while the particle su of the nominative case is added after ita. So we don't say paramita su. So what happened to that? That one's erased. What is the nominative case? Who knows? Paul, what's the nominative case?
So the nominative case is usually the subject case in a sentence.
Yeah.
So if I'd say I went to the store, I would be in the nominative.
Yeah. You don't say me go to the store. Right? You say I go to the store or something like that. So because this becomes a noun, paramita, it would end with a nominative case, but that's going to be eventually elided or made unmanifest. Okay. While the particle su of the nominative case is added after ita, thus deriving the compound param ita. Well, he doesn't mention that the su is erased in Jayananda there. When combined as paramita, although and su should become invisible here, through the rule, if there is a subsequent term, do not make it invisible. That was the rule, the Prisuddhana that we talked about before. When you made a compound, if there is a subsequent word, you don't elide the you leave that there, but you do erase the su after ita. So it's paramita. The su from the root word is made invisible, yet is not. Okay, you've got that? I thank JC for reminding the accusative case comes from jurisprudence, who is being accused. I didn't know that. Through this rule, the accusative case refers therefore to the accusative singular As this particle is not made invisible, the term assumes the linguistic form paramita. Being in Prisodara, and so forth. Yeah, it should be Prishodara, but it's the vowel R. It's not Pri. I don't know why he even has long I there. It's the vowel R. Prishodara. Being in Prishodara and so forth, the suffix ma is added to make parama, right? Since it is to be read as parama, it is stated, do not make it invisible. Thus, erasing a of am and leaving the m intact and giving it the vowel I, it becomes mita. This is how is it explained. This is Jayananda's explanation, which is not to be trusted here. What does Jeffrey say here? There appear the A of Am is erased, leaving M, to which I is added, making mita. And Lama Tsongkhapa says, Su seems wrong as the nominative ending. Thus, analysis is needed as to whether it should be C. So again, incredibly, difficult and erudite things about Sanskrit grammar, which you'll probably never remember again. But anyway, you don't just say para ita, you say paramita. But the M is actually at the end of para. Then, yeah, go on, JC.
Well, this doesn't clarify a lot of this, but one thing that seems completely non sequitur is this letter S in there, the S sound, su or si, and
right.
And it really depends on which grammar system they're even relying on, which Paul knows way better than I do. But the S letter itself is a technical letter. It's never supposed to be pronounced. It actually indicates the elision of other letters.
Right.
So
okay.
One of the things that for Chandrakirti, that would have been a throwaway line, because his readers are people who are steeped in Sanskrit grammar too, so they would know what he was talking about.
Yeah, for Chandrakirti, but the Tibetans in Tibet, in the monasteries, monks were not encouraged to study grammar, especially Sanskrit grammar. They thought it was, their teachers considered it to be something that could, or poetics or things like that. Their teachers considered it to be a sort of a waste of time. But the great masters did know about grammar and Sanskrit grammar and so forth. Rachel, what do you think?
Because it's an accusative and it's attached to the para, which is the beyond. So is that basically putting it together means it's going to beyond, like it's saying that's where you're going is beyond.
Right. The different ways of interpreting it will become you say gone beyond, or going to the other shore. You could hear the to if you say going to the other shore. If you say going beyond, gone beyond, you don't necessarily hear the accusative in there. But if you say gone to the other shore, the to is kind of like the accusative here. Subhash.
I'm sorry, Venerable George, but my question is not about the grammar. It's
okay. No.
Okay. So the question I have for you is, we are on the first ground, and on the first ground, we've come through several verses, and we are now coming to the end, right. Close to the end. Now, this ability, so here's the question. This ability of the bodhisattva to give away their body, is this something that they cultivate while they are on the first ground and manifest such abilities, well into the first ground. But so where my question comes is, when you're on the path of seeing, okay, and you've at that instant that you achieve the path of seeing, you enter the first ground. But my guess is that I'm only guessing, I'm only speculating that they don't have the ability at that moment to give away limbs. It's something that they have to practice. Is that right?
No, I don't think so. I think they have even contemplated it well before that, before the path of seeing, on the path of accumulation, on the path of preparation, the first two paths, out of bodhicitta, and they try to practice the perfections then, even before they have reached the first bhumi, right? Because when we talk about what's incumbent upon a bodhisattva is to practice the threefold Mahayana morality as exemplified in the perfections, the six perfections. So they practice generosity beforehand, but it's not yet like the admonition that Shantideva gives in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. It's not yet the right time at the very beginning of the path of accumulation, just when they develop bodhicitta, to give away the body, because the bodhicitta is not stable yet. When they reach the middling stage of the path of accumulation, they will definitely still feel pain in giving away parts of their body, but they will not lose. Their bodhicitta will be stable. They won't lose bodhicitta, and so they may be hesitant to do that. So there's a long history, maybe a great countless eon, when they're practicing on the path of accumulation and path of preparation, before the path of seeing, that they have contemplated giving away the body, given away the body sometime. Like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when I was at Khapa, the first course I attended, I would come up to his room late at night, and he would ask some question, do something on the altar, and then before I left, I would see him at the window. The screen was open, and his arm was out the window, with giving his arm to all the mosquitoes to suck the blood of. And Lama Yeshe didn't want him to do that because he could get malaria or something else. But that's kind of practice that bodhisattvas do, practicing to give their body. They're not giving their body, they're giving their blood, right? So, there's a long history of that beforehand. The bodhisattva would have been practicing. So on the path of seeing, when there's no longer pain, and if it's of great benefit to sentient beings, the bodhisattva can give his or her body.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stephen, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Venerable George. So this is related to Suvansh's question, which I found kind of interesting. Well, let me go back. So I'm wondering if some of the other yogis might want to weigh in as well. There's a Sanskrit term called pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of the senses.
Right.
It's found in the practice of yoga. And so that's where you, I guess, disengage the mind from contact with the senses. I wondered if there was a similar analogous practice in Buddhism in order to prepare for giving away the mind, or if this was perhaps related.
Giving away the body, you mean, right?
Yes, away the body. Yes, thank you.
So there are practices of restraining the senses. Shantideva mentions it very, in great detail when a practitioner, proto-bodhisattva, is walking. They try to not pay attention to what's going on around them, to fixate on the flowers and things that we might think ordinary people like ourselves would think, oh, that's what brings joy to life, you know, to see the fields of the flowers and to smell the, you know. So restraining of the senses has to do with not coming in contact with objects that then can give rise to feelings which you will invariably attend to inappropriately and generate attachment, anger, and ignorance. So there's restraining of the senses, but that sounds very boring to most people. If you were to talk about that at the beginning of a meditation course, everyone would leave because they would think you have no joy in life. You know, you can't smell the flowers, you can't eat the pizza. You know, so let's stop right there, because unless I'm mistaken, it is already past 3. Venerable Pomo has already left, so maybe she left some time ago. So any last question before we say our dedications? Doris, did you have a question? No. Okay, so we should be able to finish. I thought we would finish this today, but we still have some time to go. So we'll try to finish next time and begin next time in the second bhumi, or second, as in this text, in the Madhyamaka Vatara and in the Bhashyam, it refers to these not as chapters. It says the first mind generation, and then going to the second mind generation means going to the second bhumi. So mind generation is a synonym of bodhicitta, but it's meaning the first ultimate bodhicitta. The second ultimate bodhicitta, meaning the second bhumi, and so forth. So we'll talk about that next time. So try to read ahead, go through this. If you have a chance to, if you're so inclined, you can read something about grammar. I think nowadays the use of accusative, if you try to Google accusative, you don't find it very easily. That's still used in Latin and Greek and so forth, and in Sanskrit, but nowadays they use a different term for those different cases. So try to get familiar with this, and we will continue next time. Richard, would you like to put up the dedication prayers? There we go. So can you go down to the dedication just below that? There we go. Due to these virtues, gewadi, gewa means virtue. Due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha. May I quickly become a Guru Buddha and set all living beings without exception in that very enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. So that bodhicitta that we don't yet have, may it take root and grow. And may that which has arisen, you have to move it up a little, there we go. And may that which has not arisen, which has arisen, not diminish, but increase more and more. Long life prayers. You who uphold the Muni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And you who are eyes, my spiritual guides, you are my eyes for viewing, for seeing, reading, understanding all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means moved by mercy, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week We have a discussion group on Mondays that you're welcome to come to. We have presently, last time we had 10 people and plus myself, I think there were 11. So sort of like if you have time at 2:00 Eastern time, you can find the link. I think the link is on the Shantideva page, Doris, or is it not there? Did you say the link to the discussion group? So again, on Zoom, take care. Hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Venerable. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.